to start off this episode with a moment of silence for the sexiest voice in podcasting today. Hey everybody, it's Tim Jousma, and with me I've got
Professor Aubrey.
Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
It has been a while since you've been on.
It has.
And you are finally getting some time to sit back and enjoy before you go back to work.
That's right. I've been on summer vacation and have basically spent all of my time selling my house. And that was what I did on my summer vacation.
There you go.
Yeah.
If you had to grade your own summer vacation, what would you grade?
I would give it an F.
An F?
Yeah, it was mostly not fun.
Okay. The end result was worth it.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to a better summer next year.
There we go. All right, with your nestie.
With my nestie.
All right. Last week's episode, we did talk for a little bit about the tragic passing of Chadwick Boseman. Yes. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the episode yet, but you've definitely seen me kind of weeping around the house a little bit, like a bitch with a skinny.
Yes, I have.
Yeah. Which, I shouldn't be so flippant. If you're sad, it's okay to express your emotions. I was being flippant there. But I'm getting a glaring look like, come on. There has been some update that I did want to go over. Because one thing I speculated on last week was the fact I was going under the assumption, I always thought that to get a job on a movie, you had to essentially pass a physical for insurance related purposes.
That was how I understood it worked as well.
Yeah, and it turns out that is not the case at all. Because what I speculated was that it may have been caught by the Disney folks, but he was able to convince them that, he had the right regime to be able to fight it and still wanted that job, while giving them a chance to essentially have an out in place just in case things did take a turn for the worse, so that they could, go on as smoothly as they can with, because Marvel is not just making one movie, they're making, all their movies have to essentially tie into each other one way or another.
Right.
So, having some foreknowledge of that would have definitely helped. Now, it turns out, apparently Kevin Feige received an email from Chadwick Boseman that he did not get a chance to read until after Chadwick passed away. That led him, apparently Chadwick's every intention was to report for taping at the start of this month, to film Black Panther 2. And it was only within the last week before his death that he realized that, with the severity of where his cancer was at, he was not going to be able to gain the weight needed to be able to maintain the look of T'Challa, and being able to get up to that weight and look physical and be able to do all the stunts and whatnot. You have to physically be able to do it, and if you're suffering from stage 4 cancer, obviously it can be done, as he proved, but sometimes cancer will win, and sadly that's what we're looking at here. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that they didn't include that in their contract to begin with, or in their negotiations for the first role. But in a sense, I'm really glad they didn't, because it might have prevented us from having Chadwick playing that such an important role.
That is true, and there is nothing that's ever going to take the impact that he made with that character. It's just. Again, I'm not going to... I don't want to give the impression I'm trying to knock him for making that decision, because, he's an actor. He wanted to do the job that he trained to do to the best of his ability, and, it turns out that he, more than anybody, realized the impact that this character was going to have. So being able to be there, like the audio clip I played at the start of last week's episode, where he was being interviewed at a Sirius XM recording, and he talked about a couple of kids with cancer, and then he started crying and whatnot. Ended up reading some tweets from the mother of those kids that had passed away, and she actually even posted it in a video that Chadwick had sent to her kids, telling them that he was there for them, that he wanted them to come to the Black Panther premiere and all that, which sad stuff, but again, from all they picked the right person to be T'Challa, of course. I mean, because he realized the importance of what that character was going to do, not just for the movie universe, but for fans. I mean, these, heroes have the ability to inspire, even if it's a hero that originated from a comic book. And, you can't, if it helps somebody change the world today, tomorrow, somewhere in the future, then, it's definitely worth it. Now, as far as... Okay.
So I do think it's interesting, and it's sort of on theme for something else we're going to talk about on the show. Just the idea of how entertainment contracts, or contracts between producers of entertainment and their talent, how important those relationships are, and how the power dynamic often gets shifted in those relationships towards the producer, unless it's somebody who can really command whatever they want in terms of contract.
Yeah.
But so it would be very interesting to know the backstory of why that didn't get talked about, or whether that is a typical thing in entertainment contracts, except for big stars.
From the Hollywood Reporter, that's where I got the information. So, the Hollywood Reporter did state that, it is a fallacy that, major stars do have, all have to go through the physical process for anything like that. It's mostly for like indie films, or, because I brought up the testing before in regards to Robert Downey Jr. He had to go through a physical in order to get Iron Man, just simply because of his history with substance abuse. So, unfortunately, it didn't apply to everybody going for the role, and I think what this will do is, I think going forward, major Hollywood studios will start demanding that, physicals be done so they can catch stuff like this, if at all possible. I mean, because, what they call an act of God, you never know. Somebody could get run over by a bus, heaven forbid. But, something like this, it's just like on the business, I am, again, not trying to blame Chadwick Boseman. He was trying to pump himself up, and, he did the right thing by doing what he did.
Well, if nobody asked him, I don't think that he necessarily had any kind of obligation to tell.
No, he didn't. But I'm thinking on the business side in terms of, if I were investing $100 million in a movie, that I hoped would become a franchise and have multiple films over the course of many years, yeah, I think it's not unreasonable, especially for an action-heavy movie, for the producers to make sure that the talent are physically able to go through with that role.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm just saying that it's the producer's burden to ask those questions. It's not the entertainer's burden to assure the producers of things that they're not asking about. So I think it's a good lesson for the producers that if that's what's going on, then they ought to be asking those kinds of questions.
Yeah. But again, we are talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We're talking about comic book characters. These characters in the comics, a lot of them have died and come from the dead multiple times. And
they look different when they're drawn by different people.
There's that. And, I do think that somewhere down the road, we're talking at minimum a decade down the road or something like that, it would be possible to recast this role of T'Challa with somebody else, because I think after a decade, enough time will have passed that people will be ready to accept somebody else. Because, if they tried to cast somebody else today, they could give the greatest performance in the world, but it's not going to be Chadwick, and people are going to be upset about that. Is what it is. I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about, how much money can Disney make? But I don't think there's anything wrong with talking about, the creative stuff. And, just like I said, wanted to give a little bit of an update since there was some new information that did come to light. But, one way or another, nobody's going to forget his performance. Nobody's going to forget that first movie. And, I would be absolutely shocked if all ties to Wakanda were taken out of the Marvel Universe. Because the comics have already had a situation where Shuri took on the name of Black Panther. So they could easily just, put it on her and, do something from there. So they will find a way to get another movie in Wakanda made. So, Disney will make their money. Fans will have crossed fingers, hopefully a good movie to watch somewhere down the line. But it is sad that we lost what turned out to be a good guy. We all knew he was a great actor, but, turned out he was a really good guy. But, I did want to bring up a new topic here. It's about wrestling. We did have we did have some positive, sort of positive wrestling news with AEW's All Out happening last night. There was a match you were looking forward to.
There was. I was very excited about the Mimosa Mayhem match, which apparently Chris Jericho was going to fight Orange Cassidy, and part of the match was that there was a giant vat of mimosa, because Orange Cassidy, orange juice is his thing. And
Chris Jericho, when he won the title, got a catchphrase, a little bit of the bubbly over, and now he has his own champagne that he calls a little bit of the bubbly. So that's why.
Yes, and I did not watch the wrestling. I don't think you did either.
No, it was on pay-per-view, but there are ways to watch it for free that you're not like torrenting or downloading. The match ended up getting on YouTube for a bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so you were able to watch it.
Yes, without being a pirate. Good.
Arr. Never want to be a pirate.
Those days are over.
So Orange Cassidy won, which was exciting.
Yes. If you haven't checked out Orange Cassidy's work, I'm pleasantly surprised the fact that it's become such a hit. I liked his character, but I did have doubts as to whether that character could progress in a weekly television show, because it's one thing to be an independent wrestler and then you only see him once every couple of months and he can just do the same things over and over again, but you see him every week. He has to change. And it's been great to see him kind of show the world what he can do, because Orange Cassidy is a talented guy. But let's talk about somebody that sucks in wrestling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it Vince McMahon?
It is Vince McMahon. How did you guess?
Because he really sucks.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. What I wanted to talk about here was a report that came out stating that the WWE has told their talent that they can no longer use third-party platforms like Twitch, like Cameo, and similar services like that. There's an article here I'll read a bit from Fightful.com, a reputable wrestling news source. It says, Vince McMahon is putting his foot down regarding talent going outside the WWE bubble. According to Raj Giri of Wrestling Inc., Vince McMahon held a call with talent to no longer engage with third parties, which would presumably include Twitch and Cameo. McMahon sent out a memo later in the week noting talent would be punished for continued acts of engagement. Fightful has been able to confirm the report. In the letter, he wrote, some of you are engaged with outside third parties using your name and likeness in ways that are detrimental to our company. It is imperative that these activities be terminated within the next 30 days. Continued violations will result in fines, suspensions, or terminations at WWE's discretion.
Wow.
And there's more to it, but again, basically, it's Vince McMahon telling his independent contractors that they cannot use the services that make them additional money outside of their regular 9-to-5 job with the WWE.
Right, and that's ridiculous.
It definitely is. It definitely is, because I really don't get how the WWE has lasted this long with, or the wrestling industry as a whole has gone. Excuse me, has gone this long. There's always something with my throat in this show. I don't know why, but I don't know how they've gotten away with calling their talents independent contractors. Now, the smaller companies, you can get around that because the talent are still able to go from company A to company B and like that. But, if you work with WWE as an independent contractor, you're not allowed to work anyplace else, even though you're technically independent. And, you are only signing on to perform a duty for somebody else. Former presidential candidate actually weighed in on the controversy here. Andrew Yang, he was on Twitter and he stated, "If I'm not the Secretary of Labor, I'm pretty confident I'll have his or her number to talk about the ridiculous classification of WWE wrestlers as independent contractors while controlling their name and likeness for years, even for something as benign as Cameo." And he had some other thoughts as well, but...
Yeah, it's very interesting to me that Andrew Yang would take an interest in this. I think it shows sort of what a big business wrestling is, and particularly in certain states like Florida, where it appears from the outside that wrestling has an inordinate amount of political power and has potentially used that power to avoid any serious inquiry into their behavior with regard to their talent.
Yeah, because, with the conditions we're living in right now, it's come out. There have been some people that have been let go from the WWE. We've talked about that before on the show too, but some more people since that have actually gotten coronavirus while being employees of the WWE, and they've all, to a T, have said that WWE made it clear that they were not happy that that information was brought to the public, which... it's like hearing, I guess it happened at the University of Alabama as well. Their sports department made it be clear to everybody to keep the results of any outbreaks of the coronavirus quiet because football makes a lot of money for them. Mm-hmm. And it's just sickening to see... I love professional wrestling. I will proclaim that to the day I die. I'm not embarrassed by it. I think wrestling is a great art form. To appreciate it, you do have to be in the audience, and I also appreciate the fact that it's not for everybody. But it's when it's done well, it's one hell of a great art form. And it just why people getting into that industry feel they have to be subservient to Vince McMahon, especially, to a lesser extent, some of the other organizations, even though they're doing varying, things of good and bad, but just Vince.
Well, since it's Labor Day weekend, it's a really great topic, I think, because it is one of those situations where there's a power differential, and people have not been able to successfully organize, and there may be structural reasons why that hasn't happened that need to be changed so that the talent feels that they're on an even playing field with negotiating with their employers. Now, when you think about it, there are lots of people who've been left behind by the labor movement, different categories of people, and certainly Black, Indigenous, people of color are some of those people. The National Labor Relations Act left out domestic workers and
retail.
No, domestic workers and I can't remember
farmhands
maybe agricultural workers.
Yeah.
And if you look at those two groups of people, are still continuing abuse of the employment relationship in both of those areas. And so I wonder if there's something like that includes an entertainment that maybe they don't have as many rights as other workers might.
A lot of it boils down to, from what I understand, there's a reason the WWE is located in Connecticut. I guess, for tax reasons, it heavily benefits them to be there. Also, since they moved since they now have a base of operation in Florida as well, Florida is a right-to-work state. Mm-hmm. And if there's something that Vince McMahon hates, it's unions. So, being able to work places like that, it's just... you know, I, this has been going on for years. I mean, I think I've related this story of Jesse Ventura attempting to get the performers to unionize. And that's what I was going to bring up, too, the fact that, essentially with the way the pay structure is set up, guys that are earning the top contracts in the WWE would have to go along with the union idea, which could see their overall money go down. Whereas the guy who's just started with the company, maybe on the opening match or not even getting on TV, his would definitely go up. And you'd be, it's a situation to where, kind of like a previous employer I worked for, people are benefited by reaching a certain status, and they will stomp on anybody else to make sure they maintain that status without seeing the benefits of everybody getting treated the same. Because the person at the top of the card, main eventing WrestleMania after WrestleMania, is going to be treated a lot differently than somebody, again, who is just starting with the company and has not made a presence yet. Whereas in a proper job, especially something that big, if there was a union involved, the rights of the worker would be protected, and it's not being protected at all.
Well, and we see, what happens in other sports that do have unionized players or participants. They are able to wield significant power, even like the writer's strike on TV, and union organizing for anyone ameliorates that sort of sense of powerlessness, because it balances the scales between the employer and the employee. So, go unions. We need them in retail. We need them in agriculture. We need them in domestic work. We need them in all areas of entertainment.
Yeah, because I speaking from a retail experience, I have seen and also been the victim of practices that, if there was a union, would not have been in place. And I'm not alone in that. There are tons of people that are, and people don't seem to want to do anything about it, because when it comes to retail, that's not a real job, is it? To me, a real job is one where the check doesn't cash at the end of the week. That's a real job to me, no matter what you're doing. And this country as a whole has to wake up. I get, as workers, you're not going to get everything you want, but there has to be a give and take here. And when you got business that has their foot on the neck of the working class in this country, we got to fight back.
Well, and if you think about the biggest growth industries are industries in which people are remaining independent contractors, or the gig economy, and how that separates people from the ability to organize, because they don't have any contact with each other. They're not under an umbrella in which they can start to even communicate. But it's a very big problem in this country, I think. It's a good time to think of it, just because it's Labor Day weekend.
I know. Solidarity, my brothers and sisters. Let's go into a brighter topic.
Okay.
Yeah, the past couple weeks here, wanted to do something a little different with the music focus, and I know you weren't a fan of the first list, the 25 hard rock and metal songs. Not a metal fan. That's one thing I've not gotten you a fan of. And then last week, of course, with my top 25 country songs. You had an idea that I thought was great, and tell folks what we're going to be discussing.
All right, yeah. I thought it would be fun, since we just did. Excuse me. I've been have a little sinus problem, and so my voice is a little gravelly, and I keep having to clear my throat. Sorry about that, everybody. But since we just did our country music playlist selection, I thought it'd be great to get a little bit deeper into the many different subgenres of whatever music that we're talking about. Like, there are different kinds of metal, there's different kinds of country music, and one of the kinds of country music is bluegrass.
Nice.
And bluegrass comes from the Appalachian Mountains, which is where I come from, and so I have a natural love for, and
it's her people.
It's my people, right?
Yeah.
And so I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about bluegrass music, and then I provide a playlist that would sort of take people through a little bit of the history and development of bluegrass, and also just some really great songs.
That is a great idea. For folks that have been listening for the past couple of weeks, one thing I did tell Aubrey was to make this list as long as she felt it needed to be, because one criticism I got from the Reverend Tracy was that the top 25 could get a little monotonous after time. I get it, point taken. I mean, I felt that same way too after the second time, so it's just like, yeah, maybe not. So it's not going to be 25 songs here, but these are great choices. So start from the top. Now, the first track on your playlist here is from the Carter family, and I'm assuming that's June Carter.
June Carter's parents and aunt.
And aunt.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to do here with the playlist is when I sat down to think about, okay, what is it about bluegrass music that I want to try and communicate with this playlist? I tried to think about how it was different from regular country music. What about it is unique, really, in thinking about all different kinds of music. And I thought about 4 characteristics of bluegrass. And so I wanted to sort of go through, we could see those different characteristics individually in some of the early songs on the playlist, and then see how they all come together in some bluegrass classics.
Nice.
So the 4 themes really are starting with vocal harmony. So bluegrass depends on what's called the high lonesome sound, which is a particular type of close harmony. So vocal harmonies is really important in bluegrass music. Sad or tragic lyrics. So one of the great things about bluegrass is the music itself sounds fun and happy because it has fast tempo, which we'll talk about, but the lyrics are often really sad and tragic at the same time that the music itself is happy. So sad or tragic lyrics. Then breakneck tempo, so really fast. And finally, the 4th characteristic being people being virtuosos in their instruments and demonstrating that in particular types of solos.
Yeah, I mean, one comment I made when you were creating the list that I made to you that I still stand by is the fact that in a lot of ways, bluegrass is to country what metal is to rock and roll.
Which really got me sort of thinking about these differences, actually, was you saying that, because I think that's absolutely true. Like, it's different from, but it has these common characteristics within its own genre. So the Carter family song that we start off with is a what I would call an old time song. And old time is a little bit different kind of music than bluegrass, and it is mostly just not as fast, but it also doesn't have the same instrumentation and the way that the harmonies work. So this is an old time song, but it was recorded in 1923. So it's sort of very early recording of a very early country song from the mountains. So it was recorded in Bristol, Bristol, Tennessee, which is on the border of Bristol. It's actually Bristol, Tennessee, and Bristol, Virginia are the same city. So it's right on the border of Tennessee and Virginia.
What are we going to name the town? I don't know. Just the same thing, but they got over there.
It's the same town. It just is a border town, right? Main Street is the state line.
I'm going to go to another state. One step. I did it.
Yes, that's what you have to do every time you go to a town like that, right? Is like stand in the middle of the road. And so this song, The Foggy Mountain Top, is a what has turned out to be a classic. Is a song that most bluegrass fans would recognize, except that it's slower, the instrumentation is different, and the harmonies are a little bit different.
Okay.
But that's a real early bluegrass song.
Yeah, I didn't realize it went all the way to the 20s. I mean, obviously they were making, recorded music at that time too. But I mean, wasn't it the late 20s, early 30s when where the music industry became an actual industry where people could buy like records and whatnot? Or?
Yeah, so these recordings were made on wax cylinders.
Okay.
And they were transcribed. So it was a market for performed music, so for sheet music and to be distributed. I think that was the primary use of it.
Okay. Yeah, there was no MTV in the 20s.
Right.
So, yeah. All right, the next song you have here is from Aubrey Ramsey.
Aubrey Ramsey, that's
Aubrey.
right. Aubrey. Yeah, it is spelled very differently from
Okay.
my name, but it is pronounced Aubrey Ramsey. And this is another example of sort of folks that just came down from the mountain. The Carter family just came down from the mountain to Bristol to record in the 20s. And Aubrey Ramsey is somebody who was just discovered as a middle-aged man at a bluegrass festival playing amazing mandolin. And that was in the 60s, I think. So he had been performing since the 40s, but just up in the mountains, not in any way in a commercial way.
Right.
And this song, Rain and Snow, it was a very influential song, primarily because it was later done by the Grateful Dead. So most people who recognize the song will recognize it as a Grateful Dead song. But it was, in fact, originally just a mountain song.
And that's interesting because there was another song that I don't think you ended up putting it on this list, but one that Nirvana ended up covering.
In the Pines.
In the Pines, yeah. It's the more you dig deep into music, if I will say this to folks that are listening to this that may not be fans of bluegrass. Give it a listen because music speaks to people in different ways. And I was watching this metal documentary, and the guy was talking to people about their influences, and it's amazing how artists in a particular music genre that like and take from other genres that aren't what they are doing, but are able to take that, whether it's some classical music or opera or something like that, and kind of apply it to their own art. I mean, it says a lot about them, and it says a lot about the original stuff. So give it a chance. All right, the next track here, the Louvin brothers. I think what they talked about on Cocaine and Rhinestones.
Yes, they absolutely were.
Yeah.
So the Louvin brothers, and the song is Knoxville Girl, and I'm from very close to Knoxville, so this is a song that I've always really loved. And it's demonstrating that sort of sad or tragic lyrics. It's a what's called a murder ballad, and it is all about how the narrator in the song had to kill this woman that he was in love with. So that's a whole sort of subgenre of country music, or murder ballads.
Oh, Johnny Cash, Delia's Gone. I mean, that's a murder ballad. Yeah. I didn't know it had a specific name.
Yeah. And the Louvin brothers were just crazy. Well, one of them was just totally crazy and involved in all kinds of stuff in Nashville that... He died very young.
Wasn't he with one that went to the guy who ran the songwriting publishing house? He showed up at his office with a gun, and the gun went off.
That sounds familiar. The crazy one was named Ira.
Yeah.
And the other one was named Charlie. And Ira, did all kinds of crazy stuff, so that wouldn't be surprising. He apparently tried to choke his wife with the telephone cord, and she ended up shooting him several times, and he was in the hospital. He survived that, and she actually said, if he doesn't die this time, I'll just shoot him again. Because apparently he was such a bad guy to try to live with.
Okay.
So, interesting. But the Louvin brothers were very popular from the 50s to the early 60s. They were on the Grand Ole Opry. They broke up in 1963, and Ira died soon after. So they have this body of work from that time period that obviously they're never going to be able to add to. And that's one of the songs that they helped make famous as Knoxville Girl.
Nice. All right, the next track, Bill Monroe and his Bluegrass Boys.
So this is sort of the first time in the playlist we get a real actual bluegrass song. So Bill Monroe is known as the grandfather of bluegrass music. Mm-hmm. And the name bluegrass actually takes its name from the name of his band, which is Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys. That's where the term bluegrass comes from originally. And Bill Monroe started recording and performing in the 1940s. And that's sort of seen as the birth of this real bluegrass music that has all four of these elements: this breakneck tempo, the vocal harmonies, the virtuosity, and those sort of sad and tragic lyrics. Now, Bill Monroe, was revered in where I come from, and everybody knew who Bill Monroe was. And I actually got to see Bill Monroe at a bluegrass festival.
All right.
And it was like seeing a king or something. Like it was really like, oh my God, I can't believe that's really him. And it was really cool.
Oh my God.
But I think what you'll notice if you listen to the playlist, when we get to this song, all of a sudden we've got that really, really, really high tempo, sort of traditional bluegrass feeling. Mm-hmm. So you're not saying anything about what you thought of these songs.
I didn't record thoughts on each and every single one of them. I will talk about the ones that I really want to talk about, like the next track, of course.
Okay. So the next track is Foggy Mountain Breakdown.
Yes!
So this is Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs. Now, Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs were in the Bluegrass Mountain Boys for a while before they became their own band. Mm-hmm. So they joined the Bluegrass Boys in 1945, played with the Bluegrass Boys for 3 or 4 years, and then became the Foggy Mountain Boys. So this is their Foggy Mountain Breakdown, which is an instrumental, really demonstrating that sort of instrument-specific breaks. So we've got solos by the banjo, the fiddle, the mandolin, all accompanied by the rest of the band. And it's that fast, beautiful bluegrass sound.
And I guarantee you all have heard this. If you're a fan of The Simpsons, there's an episode, I forgot which season specifically, but it's Grandpa versus sexual inadequacy, where Grandpa Simpson comes up with a miracle libido drug. And there's Homer and Grandpa are off in a small town somewhere trying to sell it, and Grandpa is like, I'll talk to just an average person in the crowd, you sir, and then he pulls up Homer, and he's the guy on the bottle, and then they cut to a scene of Grandpa and Homer driving away with this song playing, and you got the townsfolk back it's behind them in a pickup truck with pitchforks and everything, and Homer says, the only reason they're chasing us is that you put on this getaway music, and every time I hear this song I just break out laughing. But just because I'm laughing, I'm not laughing at the musicianship in this, because, like the banjo playing, for instance, I'd put him up against Kurt Hammett from Metallica any day. I mean, they are flying all over that banjo just as virtuosity-wise, as, if I could talk correctly, as any of, my favorite guitar players. I mean, they're all over the place, and it's a really good song. I mean, just because I laugh when I hear this song every single time, as you can attest.
Yep.
But damn, this is a good one, and also too, it gets you up, it gets you moving, because even when I'm listening to it or just thinking about it, you're bouncing back and forth. You cannot help but move when you listen to this song.
Awesome. I'm glad you like that one.
Mm-hmm. All right.
The next song is Ruby, Are You Mad at Your Man, which is by the Osborne Brothers. Another set of brothers. We've got lots of brothers. We've got the Stanley Brothers. We've got the Osborne Brothers.
Are they related to Ozzy?
No, they are not related to Ozzy. But so the Louvin Brothers, we've got lots of brothers, but these brothers, the Osborne Brothers, very popular in the 50s and 60s. And I think show off that sort of high lead melody singing. It starts out Ruby, Ruby.
Yeah. I felt like an episode of Petticoat Junction was going to start. It definitely puts you in a mood when it starts. I mean, now that's one thing too. I mean, you mentioned the high. I mean, they do intentionally kind of have go for the higher pitched voice, right?
Yeah, you want to have enough range in the band that you can do the harmonies and the thirds and the fifths. So you've got to have a pretty high or pretty wide range of vocal ability in the band.
Mm-hmm. But for this track? What is the reason you put it on? What drew you to this track? Why do you like it?
I like that. So it was really that singing that made me put it in there. There's some other songs people might have heard. Doc Watson singing "Oh Death" in what's the name of that movie?
Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember Doc Watson singing "Oh Death," but there's this sort of almost yodely, sort of high pitched singing in a lot of bluegrass songs.
Who was that country singer? The female country singer, was it Leanne Rimes, who at the very start of her career as a country artist did some yodeling on her songs?
She might have.
Okay. It was either her or Taylor Swift or some,
It would have
young
been
lady country
Leanne.
singer.
I think it was Leanne Rimes.
Okay. Because like the Ruby thing it reminded me of that, because I think it was the word blue that she ended up BLUE that she ended up doing the vocaling, the yodeling for in the particular songs. Yeah. But anyway, let's move on to the next one. We got more brothers, the Stanley Brothers and the Clinch Mountain Boys.
Yes, the Stanley Brothers and the Clinch Mountain Boys is Ralph Stanley and his band. And Clinch Mountain is a mountain very close to where I grew up, and I've been to bluegrass festivals in the shadow of Clinch Mountain. And so this song, or this band, is a really great one, and I wanted to include them.
Nice.
And the song itself is just it's barn burner. It's
Little
a good
Maggie.
time. Little Maggie.
Yep. All right. Another one with the high-pitched vocals here, the Dillards.
The Dillards. So I love the Dillards because they were the bluegrass band that would come down from the mountain in the back of a truck on the Andy Griffith Show. And so they were a real bluegrass band, a really good bluegrass band, but they also played this bluegrass band characters in the Andy Griffith Show. And it was always great when they were on it because they would play a great song. And this is one of the songs that they're most famous for. But I just really like the Dillards. I could listen to whole Dillards albums. Like, they've got a very classic, clean bluegrass sound. It's very traditional and awesome.
Growing up, I had to watch a lot of Andy Griffith because my mother loved that show. Another one of her bad TV show choices, but it was always on TBS, the Ted Turner owned Superstation, because TBS got famous off the backs of Andy Griffith, Braves baseball, and professional wrestling. And it wasn't until the mid '90s that they started, branching off and doing other things to more of what we know of TBS today. But just I hated that show. I even hated Barney Fife.
That's too bad. I loved that show. I used to love watching that show in syndication.
Yeah, overall, I'm not a big sitcom fan, period. The only sitcom that I look back on and still can watch, even in smaller doses, is Three's Company, which I'm glad has got its own channel now on Pluto TV. That's awesome. But anyway, I did like to for this song, the Dooley, how they did go up in the high vocal range. It did set the feel. You did kind of feel country going on.
And the subject matter of that song is great too. It's all about moonshining and trying to get some moonshine off somebody for no money, and it's just a fun song.
All right, the next one from the Country Gentlemen, I thought was a '70s rock song.
Right. No, it is a bluegrass song, Fox on the Run. And this has got some beautiful harmonies in it. It's just a real nice. It's a love song. It's sad though, right? So I'm like, it's a really happy song, but the lyrics are something like, she took all the love that a poor boy could give her and left me to die like a fox on the run. Right? That's the lyric, but it's like da 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 in the song, right?
Yeah, which, speaks to how people do try to, when they're in the dumps like that, due to a breakup or something like that, how they will try to put on a happy face, even though they're, going through tons of turmoil on the inside. So, yeah, I mean, to your point, I think that's why that particular, song works the way it does. So, all right, the next one here, simple band name, Jim and Jesse.
Jim and Jesse, who were very famous. They played it on the Grand Ole Opry, of course, like all these guys did. And
not at the Apollo, come on.
Not at the Apollo, at the Grand Ole Opry. And this is a very famous song. Most people know it. It's been performed by, almost every country music star, probably. I know the Willie Nelson version the best, but it's one of those country classics. But here done in a bluegrass style.
Okay.
Probably the first version of it that was in popular music.
Okay, before Willie Nelson
Yes.
or others got their hands on it? Okay.
Yeah.
What made you include it on the list? What is it, as a bluegrass primer that this playlist is supposed to be, what about it is going to speak to bluegrass?
It's got all four parts as well. It's fast. It's got an upbeat tempo. It's got vocal harmonies. It's got some really good musicians playing on it. And the lyrics are not, it's about people when, let's say you're having a real fun party at your house and people start leaving and you don't want them to, right? And you're like, come on, stay with us, which is what we would say back home.
Come on, you guys.
Or you can, here, make a pallet on the floor, stay with us. And you don't want people to leave the good time. That's sort of what the song is about. It's just a great classic country song. I really like finding the original version of something that I have appreciated somebody else doing. I feel like I learn a lot more about, the song itself if you can hear it in its initial version.
Oh, exactly. Do that with any song, really.
Yeah,
because,
for sure.
It's night and day, like all along the Watchtower. Listen to Dylan's version, listen to Hendrix' version. It's two different songs, but it's the same song. And, Hendrix was able to bring out so much. If we want to stay in the country vein, crazy. Willie Nelson, Patsy Cline, both essentially played it the same way, but how Patsy delivered, her vocals made that song so much more emotional and richer than Willie Nelson did. And that's saying a lot, because his version of that song is really damn good too. Mm-hmm. But again, that's also a song that I don't think too many people could fail at, But
if you have the chops for it.
True, but I think the beauty of that song is that, even in a karaoke setting, that's one that you really have to work hard to really screw up on. I think there are some songs that, regardless of your vocal range or how good or bad or a singer you are, you're still able to deliver halfway decently. Like, I suck as a singer, but if I have a little whiskey and I sing like Margaritaville, I can pull that off. Now, Margaritaville doesn't have that much range at all. Most people can play that, and that's what I'd kind of put it at,
Gotcha.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
That look, you're kind of dopey. That's cute. All right. Speaking of that, let's go on to the next one here. Old and in the Way. What a band name.
Yeah, so we're getting into the 70s now, and sort of an interesting thing that happens. This is Americana, roots music. It came from many different cultures and sort of coalesced in the Appalachian Mountains. And that is sort of traditional bluegrass, and you can go hear a traditional bluegrass band play. They'll play a lot of the same songs that are on the playlist. A lot of songs by these same bands. Everybody's sort of playing the same stuff. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot new going on. Then in the 70s, people started to sort of experiment a little bit more with what they could bring that would be new and different to the genre. And so we get these interesting combinations. And Old and in the Way is actually Jerry Garcia's bluegrass band.
Oh.
So they were performing in the early 70s in the Bay Area. And this is a live version of Pig in a Pen from, I think, 1973. And the band included Jerry Garcia, who...
from the Grateful Dead. I mean, if you don't know who Jerry Garcia is, then, I mean, you have to know him even if only from the Ben & Jerry ice cream.
Yep, exactly. And David Grisman, Peter Rowan, Vassar Clements, and John Kahn are the band.
John Kahn?
No, those first four really musicians. David Grisman and Peter Rowan are very famous, very accomplished bluegrass players. David Grisman mixes some jazz into his bluegrass, so there's sort of this new kind of bluegrass. It's either called newgrass or progressive bluegrass, and it's sort of changing the basic formula to include some different elements. And so we see that it is growing out of traditional bluegrass, because this is a traditional bluegrass song performed by those more progressive bluegrass artists.
Yeah.
Pig in a Pen is just a fun song. Got a pig in a pen. I'm going to feed him, and I'm going to get him big and fat, kill him, and eat him. It's basically what the song is all about.
Yeah, and it's interesting how music can change. Because to your point, yeah, I mean, I don't think something like rock and roll is necessarily going to live forever or anything like that, or always be as popular as it was in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Things, have a peak and a valley. I don't think it's going away, but it changes. Music changes. What's popular today will not be popular tomorrow, or grow into something completely different. I mean, who would have thought with a group like Baby Metal?
Right.
I mean, who would have thought, taking like girl pop music and mixing it with metal? It works though. But that's how, that's how people people are going to have that link to the past, though, because if music does not grow, people aren't necessarily going to go back. Like, because you talked about doing this with like bluegrass and country musicians. I did it with rock musicians. When like you listen to music from the Rolling Stones and whatnot, and then you read articles or read these days they're books, and hear about their influences of the blues. With Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, artists like that. What did I do? Went to the music store, bought some Muddy Waters, bought some Howlin' Wolf, and listened to them and how they were able to take something that's completely different from what they were doing and yet make it their own. And just that's the beauty of art.
Yeah, it really is.
Mm-hmm. All right, the next track here, the Dale McCurry Band. Unless I mispronounced that.
Well, you skipped Ricky Skaggs. So
it wasn't on the list.
Oh, you don't have Ricky Skaggs on your list?
You updated the list. Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my God. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. So, okay, let's skip Ricky Skaggs.
No, you did put Ricky Skaggs on. It's okay. It wasn't on my list.
So there's this guy named Ricky Skaggs, obviously. And the reason I included this track, Little Cabin Home on the Hill, this is a very old song. This is a song from the 40s. We just had a track that was kind of got some experimental stuff going on, and some experimental artists. And now Ricky Skaggs is about as traditional bluegrass as you can get. And we see that in the 80s, when this song was released by Ricky Skaggs, he is just playing the same song from the 1940s and hoping to do as good a job as the bands that before him played that same song.
Yeah.
And so that's something else that's happening in bluegrass all the time, is that we're hearkening back to those same songs that were written and produced between 1940 and, say, 1960. So it was always this pull back to the traditional, back to the purest form, back to the original songs. So
gatekeeping in music form.
Yeah, gatekeeping in music form, exactly. So we're going to go back a little bit and get some Ricky Skaggs. And he's fairly famous. Like, he's the one person I thought people would have heard of.
I've heard of him, so, because my mother watched the Nashville Network in the 80s when I was a kid often enough, and, he was one of the names that I remember would pop up on there, along with Reba McEntire with those shoulder pads in the 80s, the Judds.
The beaded gowns.
Oh, God.
Still a good song. And Ricky Skaggs is a good player and a good singer, and
from the way you're making it sound here, it's he's done with that song what Ray Romano did with Everybody Loves Raymond. He's not recreating the wheel here. It's just he's doing something, but doing something that everybody else has done before, but he's just good at it.
Yep, exactly. Okay. Exactly.
All right. Now the Del McCoury Band.
The Del McCoury Band has been around for so long, and Del McCoury is this, he's also somebody who sings on a real high octave, and he and his band are amazing to see in person. I've seen him in person several times, and just absolutely amazing to watch.
Should you throw your panties?
I would not throw my panties at anyone.
Okay.
I'm not a panty thrower at such events.
Not like your mom. Hey, no.
Hey. And then this song itself is a real old song. It's been done by lots and lots of bands, and it definitely demonstrates that sort of sad and tragic lyrics again. Here we say, I'd rather be in some dark hollow where the sun never shines than to be away from my loved one.
They're doing to this music what it sounds like Frank Sinatra did with the classics, like the Cole Porter songs. Cole Porter was big in the 1910s and 1920s, but thanks to Sinatra and people like that bringing their own interpretation of that, the music
keeps it alive.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last track in the playlist is the most recent track in the playlist in terms of the origin of the song.
Right.
And so the song is Slopes, and the band is called Strength in Numbers. They have put out one album. It's a collection of some really amazing musicians, including Bela Fleck. Have you ever heard of Bela Fleck?
Bela Fleck. Yeah, he. I told you about it. He's wrote one of my favorite Garth Brooks songs.
Oh.
Call 'em Baton Rouge. Bela Fleck and the Flecktones originally did that song.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so
they're like, fuck Garth Brooks. I hate that guy. Fuck him. Big-headed bitch.
So Bela Fleck, Mark O'Connor, Sam Bush, Jerry Douglas, and Edgar Meyer are the Strength in Numbers band.
I wish I were an Edgar Meyer.
They happened to get together in Telluride, Colorado in the late 1980s and say, like, let's play some music together and do things a little bit differently. So it's instrumental, but you can compare it to maybe Foggy Mountain Breakdown. That was an instrumental piece of work that really demonstrated its virtuosity and on the musician's part.
Right.
And Strength in Numbers is kind of doing the same thing, but you could sort of, what does that mean in 1989 or in 1990, as opposed to what did it mean in 1945?
Yeah, I mean, Bela Fleck, one hell of a musician. I did not realize he was involved in this. What I liked about this particular song was it did feel like a bluegrass song, but it also felt like a pop song as well, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. This could have easily been played on the radio anywhere in the country, and because the negative connotation that does come to mind that I think of with bluegrass music is that unfortunately the sound, people do have negative connotations when it comes to that sound in the South, which is unfortunate. What? Imagine that.
I mean, as one of those people, right?
Yeah, I'm not speaking for me. I'm just.
No, I know, but it's interesting. It's always interesting to me to hear about those negative connotations because I'm like, what? Where? Why?
It's like, you know, like that documentary Hillbilly. I mean, bringing up, you know, the example of something like Cletus the slack-jawed yokel. You know, it just ties into that negative stereotype, the negative stereotype that was created by rich businessmen to stomp their foot on the little guy in the Appalachian Mountains just because they were fighting for, you know, their health because of the coal mines. You know, so that's the negativity I'm talking about. But I liked how it like I said, I liked how it very much was a bluegrass song while feeling different. It was
More sophisticated.
It evolved. It's an evolution, I guess. I mean, it's sophisticated, sure, but only because in '89 they had a lot better, you know, studio equipment to be able to record that music. I mean, that would be, but that would be no fault of the original recording artist, because if, you know, in the 30s and 40s that they had access to the equipment they had in the 80s, you know, they would sound, you know, a lot better than they did, you know, because just turning it, as you all in the audience know, listening, when you're hearing somebody talking to just one microphone, sometimes it doesn't come out the absolute best. You know?
Yeah. So that brings us up to, you know, the 90s, and I think that you could keep going in this progression to today, because bluegrass is a very popular form of music. There's always new bluegrass bands popping up. There's lots of festival culture around bluegrass, which I think helps keep it alive and vital and connected to people today.
It's an important musical time capsule of our history in our country. You know, just like rock and roll is, just like, you know, R&B is. You know, we live in a great country. We're all fighting right now, but we live in a great country if you think about it at the end of the day. You know, a lot needs to be fixed, but, you know, music is one way to kind of celebrate how unique we are, you know, and it shows the best of particular regions, particular areas, like, you know, Motown did for R&B music. You know, that particular area was definitely raised up, and it's great to be able to go back and listen to this. So I am probably not going to have too many bluegrass bands on, you know, playlists going forward, but I did really love going through and listening to this music, even if it was, you know, listening to Foggy Mountain Breakdown over and over again, just to get a good laugh in. But it was a great exploration here, and I, you know, definitely encourage you all in the audience to check out the playlist and give it a listen, dive a little deeper. If I were you, I would add In the Pines back onto the list, because you listen to songs like that, and then, you know, compare it to what modern artists have done with it as well. So definitely give it a listen.
And if you love bluegrass music, or you discover that you love bluegrass music, there's a great streaming radio station, WDVX, out of East Tennessee, that streams via the internet, that you can listen to for free anytime you want, and plays a wonderfully curated, and they've got some really smart and knowledgeable DJs, and it's a great radio station to listen to. Again, that's WDVX, and they're out of close to Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yeah, family that run the place? Or?
No.
You're not just a satisfied customer. There we go.
That's right, just a satisfied customer.
All right, we're going to wrap things up here.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you for being on once again.
Of course. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, it better be. No.
Hey, you.
Oh, I forgot to do it at the start of the show, but that mayoral candidate, Sarah, how do you pronounce her last name?
I think it's Einarone.
Einarone? Yeah, Sarah Einarone. If you are listening, and I'm going to hopefully bring this show to your attention via social media, we would love to have you on our show.
We would love that so much.
So much. We don't have the biggest platform in the world, so if you pass we totally get it. But with everything going on in Portland, I certainly feel it's vital that we get new leadership as mayor in the city of Portland, because Ted Wheeler is just not cutting it whatsoever.
Not doing a good job.
Yeah, and we would love to have you on to be able to discuss what change you want to bring to Portland. So that invitation is there. We hope you take advantage of it. If you don't, we understand. How's that for pleading?
That was good. You didn't sound too desperate.
No, not too desperate, yeah. I wasn't asking for a date or anything.
Right.
Please! All right. Another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy is in the books. We thank you all for listening. We will see you next time. And remember,
it's such a good feeling to know you're alive. It's such a happy feeling. You're growing inside, and when you wake up ready to say, I think I'll make a snappy new day. It's such a good feeling, a very good feeling, the feeling you know that I'll be back when the day is new, and I'll have more ideas for you, and you'll have things you'll want to talk about. I will too. You always make each day such a special day. You know how? By just your being you. Only one person in the whole world like you. That's you yourself. I'll be back next time. Bye-bye.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.